I went from trading my time for money, getting a paycheck, working a certain amount of hours, doing a job and getting a paycheck, to having ownership in something that would pay me no matter what. No matter if I was working, whether or not I was sick, whether or not I was paying attention, whether or not, because once you have ownership in something and it's a profitable business, and that business is kicking off dividends or profit sharing checks, you just receive the check and you just cash those checks. I turned 50, y'all, and I started a podcast.
Really, age is just a number. It comes down to how we choose to live and the choices we make in our life, and those things accumulate.
Don't let the programming of life keep you from doing things every single day that make you happy.
When we feel good, it's easy to think good.
Life is not happening to you. You are your life. You are happening to your life. Hello and welcome to the podcast. This episode is the first installment of a series of episodes on business, entrepreneurship, and residual income. This is a subject that I'm really passionate about. It's as an entrepreneur, this is what I spend my life doing, is kind of evaluating business plans, investing in and helping to supervise and operate businesses. And it's something that over time I've gotten really good at. And a lot of times you get really good at something because you fail forward. A lot of attempts, a lot of failures. And as long as you can learn from your failures, eventually you begin to figure out the patterns of what's going to make you successful. But in this first episode of this subject matter, I want to talk about the origins of my entrepreneurship, which reside firmly in relationship with my father. And I was recently invited to participate in a women's conference that was last month that was called Embody Your Greatness. And I was asked to be a speaker at this event. And I set out to create a talk that would be inspiring, that would engage people, share them a little bit about my life and some of the experiences I had been through, and how I continue to try to develop myself and iterate myself on an upward spiral. And as I reflected on my life and I was coming up with the content for my talk, I realized that one of the stories I needed to tell was the story of how I came to work with my father in his business many, many years ago. In fact, it was 2002. And it was actually a wonderful process to go through this reflection and put together this information for this conference that I spoke about. And I only spoke for 15 minutes. And so I really wanted to expand on this subject and talk about a little bit more detail of what it was like having, number one, working for my dad, but also learning everything that I learned about being an entrepreneur. So before I tell you what happened in 2002, when I started working with my dad, I need to go back 3 years prior to that to give some context. So 3 years prior was 1999. And in 1999, I was living in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, mostly up to no good. But I spent a year there working in the tourism industry. And by the end of the year, I basically needed to come back to California and move in with my parents, basically with my tail between my legs and, no money and no prospects, as they say. And at this point, I was I 28 years old? 28, I think I was. So I moved in with my parents and I needed to get a job in a temp agency in order to save enough money, so that I could get my own place. And I think I also sold my car. And a few months later, I was able to put a down payment, or not put a down payment, get enough money to um, um, get an apartment of my own. It was a little studio apartment in Oceano Beach. And I found myself a full-time permanent position working for a mom and pop internet marketing business. It was I was their kind of administrative assistant, office manager, accounting person. Um, and their business was this little office above a retail store in Pismo Beach. And it was actually a really beautiful view. And I got to sit there every day. But, you know, I carved out a sweet little life for myself. I was making $10 an hour. So I had a little budget and I had my little my little studio apartment. And of course, I sold my car. So I had a bike and I would get on my bike and I would ride down California Highway 1 from Oceano to Pismo Beach every day and go to work, and things were all right. Things were all right. Fast forward to 2002. And at the time, my dad had decided he was going to be leaving his position as the hospital administrator there locally, and he was going to start his own outpatient surgery center development company along with it was three other surgeon partners. Now, they had been doing this a little bit on the side for the previous, I think, at least 3 years, developing outpatient surgery centers kind of all up and down the central coast and Central Valley of California. But in 2002, he was quitting his job and he was going to do this full time with his partners. And he started talking to me about, whether or not would I consider coming to work for this company, for him and this company, and help them really take this business model national. And, my first reaction was absolutely not. I don't, want to work for my dad. My dad, is very, very, strict, very, you know, strong-willed, domineering, intimidating, could be condescending at times. I say that lovingly, but he demands. I'm certain, as a daughter, demands a lot, but also as an employee, I was like, I don't even want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. But we continued to have discussions about it. He did not let it go. He was not deterred. And I'm sure I, sought counsel from my mom and from my friends and other people. And I continued to consider it, but I was really, really hesitant. But at one point, I think what, pushed me over the edge in the positive direction to work for him was he offered me $12.50 an hour. So that represented a 25% hourly increase. So I did it. I took the leap and I decided to go ahead and work for my dad. And, I did end up working really, really, really hard. For sure, I worked really hard, but what I didn't realize was that it would begin, really the next 5 years kind of became a real world MBA. Um, my dad became my mentor. It was a mentorship program. And he taught me everything. When I started out working for him, I was getting coffee, and making deposits to the bank or, setting up appointments or running errands. But my dad he did not see that for me. He really saw something in me. And so every time he was tasked with something like, hey, I got to review these floor plans, or I need to put this financial projection together for a new surgery center, or I need to host a business meeting, for these doctors, he would include me. So I I started to learn about, putting a business plan together. What needs to go inside of a business plan. I had to always, we had to look at financial statements and financial reports and put these, things together. And so I learned the difference between like a profit and loss and a balance sheet, and how to put a budget together of a financial, business budget, how to um, put financial projections together for a business. Um, all of these things. I attended, he brought me along on these business trips. He wanted me to see, how meetings were run, in all these different cities that we would go to. We initially started working in St. Louis, Missouri. So we had all of these trips. We would go back and forth to St. Louis and host business meetings with these physicians, and I would sit and I would take notes. So I learned how to plan meetings, right? How to create an agenda for a business meeting, and then make sure that you had all of the attachments and all of the backup information for everything single thing on the agenda for a meeting. And then you prepared these packets and you made sure every single thing was correct, and you printed them out and you made packets for these doctors. And and then I would sit there in the meetings and just take notes, watching all of this happen, and recording, really recording with a pen and a paper, um, everything that was happening and the decisions that were made and the action items that were, created. And it was unbelievable, how this man, my dad, took me under his wing. And every time I learned something new, he just then let me do that, and then tasked me, with a, a new challenge. And it was amazing. And the business model that he had put together with his business partners was really, it's one of the most brilliant business models I've ever encountered. And in fact, so brilliant that I've tried to replicate it, or brainstorm on different industries that you could replicate it. But basically, the business model is that we looked to partner with surgeons anywhere in the country, um, who did outpatient surgeries. So outpatient just means that you can do the surgery during the day, and then that you can discharge the patient by the end of the day, and that they can come home. So these would be things like, cataract surgery, or, ear, nose, and throat surgery, or podiatry, simple foot surgery, orthopedic surgery. Back in the day in 2002, to 2010, I don't think we were doing total knees or hips, total joints like that, but you can now because of the, so anyway, we would partner with surgeons who were doing outpatient surgery. So it could be any, I mean, breast surgery, cosmetic surgery, all these things, but mostly we worked with doctors that had a lot of insurance. We didn't focus on cosmetic and cash, um, elective cases. And the idea is that we would then partner. We would create a surgery center. We would build them a surgery center, and we would partner with the surgeons so that they could do their outpatient surgeries in the surgery center that they owned. And what we did is we brought our expertise in doing everything but the surgery. So we would put the group of surgeons together. We would find the group of surgeons, put them together. We'd have an operating agreement that bound us together. Then we would go to a bank and we would get financing on behalf of the group. We would scout out and find a location, to build the surgery center. Normally, it was a building that was already existing, and we would just do what they call tenant improvements on this building. We would hire the contractor, we would hire the interior designer, and we would, go out to bid on these things, and then once it became under construction, we would manage that construction. We would recruit and hire a nurse manager, a business manager, who would then go out and recruit all the other staff. We would manage all of the equipment, purchasing, everything you need to supply an outpatient surgery center. And most importantly, we would work to get the surgery center licensed by the state in which it was located. So, if we had a surgery center in Missouri, we would get it licensed in the state of Missouri by the healthcare department. So, and then once the surgery center was open and licensed, we would remain as one of the board members. So it would be us holding one board seat, and the other board seats would be held by the surgeons that worked in the surgery center. Now, we did not charge for our services, but in exchange for our services, we owned 35% of the surgery center. So the local surgeons would own 65%. We would own 35%. We would do all of our services up front. We wouldn't charge for them. And then when the surgery center was open, the surgeons would do their surgeries there, and we would help kind of monitor and supervise the operations. And then for every profit dollar, it was split, according to ownership, right? So if the surgery center made $1, our company made 35 cents and the surgeons made 65 cents. And that's into perpetuity, like for the rest of the surgery center's existence. It took us about a year, maybe a year and a half, to develop a surgery center, depending on, what we encountered in the process. So we did about a year and a half's worth of work. And then the surgeons took over, and then again we were able to earn profits side by side with the. And so when you have a model like that, when you have a model where everyone's an owner, this is the first time I learned this lesson. When you can have a business where everyone's an owner, everyone thinks like an owner. Everyone is incentivized for the same thing, for the business to be successful and to make money. Nobody's just getting paid to be there. I mean, of course your employees are, but as far as the relationship between all of the owners, our company and the surgeons, we were all incentivized. We were tied at the hip. And the result is that these surgery centers were very, very, very successful. And the other, reason, there's so many reasons why it was successful, but another reason why it was successful is that it was a win-win-win-win for everybody. It's a win for the surgeons because they get to do their surgeries in an outpatient surgery center that they own, that they've kind of handpicked the staff, that they can have their surgical day that they want, that they can not be interrupted, by emergency cases like they would be in the hospital. They don't have to deal with sick patients, So basically, instead of being, doing their surgeries in the hospital, they were able to do them in a surgery center. It's way more convenient. They can be way more efficient. They're not dealing with sick people, and they get a lot more surgery done, which means they're making a lot more money. And of course, they're also participating in the revenue of the facility, which they don't get to do in a hospital. So, and the patients win. The patients get a happy surgeon, an efficient surgeon, an experience where they don't have to go into a hospital. There's a bunch of sick people, very low infection rate. And believe it or not, it costs less to do surgery in a surgery center than it does in a hospital. So the insurance has to pay less. The patient has to pay less. It's a win-win-win. So I spent, 5 years like under the tutelage of my dad and going to all of these meetings and learning all of these things. And at one point I even became a licensed administrator of an outpatient surgical center. That's like a licensed designation that you have to get training for and take a test for. And as I said earlier, I worked really, really, really hard, which is what I had been anticipated when I took that job. But I was really well rewarded for that, for my hard work and dedication. So I told you my dad paid me $12.50 an hour. Mind you, I think I'm 30 years old at this point, okay? Making $12.50 an hour. And I'm that's what I earned for the first full year. And then I got a raise to $15 an hour, and I made that for the entire second year. Year 3, I think I made about $18 an hour. Year 4, I think I was put on salary for about $50,000 a year. Woo! Year 5, my dad allowed me to participate in profit share. So he let me earn 1% of the profits that he brought into the company. So I wasn't earning 1% off the company profits, but my dad's portion, he shared with me 1% of his 100. But you know what? That company was making a ton of money. And so even 1% of his profit was a lot of money. I mean, I was, he really, after 5 years, was I was being rewarded for the hard work. And it was really, really exciting. Very, very exciting. Then one of my colleagues who had by then become my best friend, and to this day, 20 years later, I can't believe it's been 20 years. She is still my best friend, and she was working with me, so we worked together. We both held the same position at the company, and we kind of started realizing, that really where the money was to be made in this business plan was if you could somehow get yourself a piece of ownership of these surgery centers. And, how are like, I don't know how we would ever be able to do that, right? I mean, we were employees. And so we talked about it, and I just never occurred. I never thought that they would ever allow us to participate in ownership in this company. But my friend Chris, she really felt that if we made the case, um, it could happen. So at one point, she crafted a letter on our behalf, on her and my behalf, that we sent to the two owners, my dad and his partner. That basically, I wish I had a copy of this letter. She probably has a copy of it, but we made the case that would you consider allowing us to go out and develop surgery centers under the umbrella of this company? Go find choose the state, find the city, locate the doctors, sign up a group of doctors for a project, do all the work, hold all the meetings, you know, um, do all the work, just do everything from soup to nuts. If we did that, could we please do that? Would you give us an opportunity to try? Because we really want to create some equity in this company. We really want to be able to participate in the profits, like, you know. And I really did not think they were going to go for it. I remember, I don't know if it was the night that she sent it or the night that after she sent it, we were waiting to hear back, and we were just wondering what are they going to say? What are they going to say? And if you want to believe it, they agreed. They agreed to allow us to develop our own surgery centers. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, basically they said, okay, we're going to give you a shot to go out and find new projects to do. You can use the resources and the support of our team and our company to help you do this. And if you are successful, you will earn the ability to purchase ownership in these surgery centers. We will earn the ability to purchase ownership in these surgery centers. And by the way, this better not affect in any way, shape, or form the job you're doing at this company that you're being paid to do. So in other words, you have a full-time job. And by the way, it was more than a full-time job. We probably worked 60, 70 hours a week, easy. And in other words, you have to do your job. Nothing in your job can suffer. We can't notice that you're taking time away from your job in order to develop your own surgery centers. And then you can do that in your spare time. And if you're successful, you will be able to earn the ability to purchase ownership in these surgery centers. Oh my God, we got this response back, and I honestly couldn't believe it. I could not believe these two men. These guys were drivers. I mean, these guys, I'm talking about my dad and his partner. I mean, they were drivers. They were end result people. It's like the process doesn't matter. We want the results. We want the surgery center. We want it now. We want it done correctly. Don't make one mistake. Don't make a misstep. Don't embarrass us. Like, it better be perfect. It better be professional. It better be on time. It better be, they were so meticulous and so driving. And, that's just the way it was. So I couldn't believe that they were giving us an opportunity to do this. And I think ultimately they must have thought, well, boy, they have a bunch of balls to even ask us to do this. Because by the way, we were the only women in this company. I mean, I should say, let me back that up. All of the surgeon partners that were partners in our company, my dad, his partners, and all of their junior partners were all men. My partner, Chris, and I, we were women, and they did hire a couple of nurse administrator people. We did eventually hire some female people that worked at our company, but we were living in a 90% male dominated situation. So they must have thought, wow, these gals have a lot of balls. They've got some big balls to ask us to do this. And then they must have thought, if they can be successful, if I can be successful, it's just going to make them more money, right? It's just more people bringing them more projects, because the more projects you sign, the more money you make. You're just making 35% off every center. So the more they sign, the more money they make, right? And they're the ones making the bulk of the money, and we had the ability to earn. So the deal is we would have the ability to earn, was it 1% or 3%? I think it was 3%. We were able to earn 3%. We were able to purchase 3% in a surgery center. It was either 1, 2, or 3%. It was tiny. So out of the 35%, we were able to do 1, 2, or 3%. I forget. And maybe it just depended on the deal or something like that. It was a little tiny percent. But a small percentage of a big chunk of money is a lot of money still. So I couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe that they were giving us this opportunity. And I'll tell you what, we did not waste that opportunity. I went right to work. This was probably, oh gosh, this is post Katrina. That happened in New Orleans. And I think Katrina was 2000. Oh my gosh, I'd have to look it up. But this was the year after Katrina. And I had gone to New Orleans after Katrina to take that course on being an administrator of an outpatient surgical facility. The course and the training and the testing was happening coincidentally in New Orleans. And I had never been to New Orleans in my life, but I went there post Katrina to do this training. And honestly, I was so shocked and so moved and so transformed by what I saw and what I learned about what happened during Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath, really the human catastrophe that happened. And so, fast forward when we got this opportunity to develop our own surgery centers, I really realized where I wanted to go was Louisiana, and I wanted to help have a positive impact on the people of Louisiana, specifically New Orleans, outside of New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Shreveport, etc. Because after Katrina, a lot of people left that area, include people and doctors and nurses, professional people, hospitals closed, all kinds of things left the southern part of Louisiana. And when I started doing my research, I realized that actually workers' comp insurance pays really well in Louisiana. The insurance companies actually have favorable payment structures for outpatient surgery, and there was really a need. There was really a human and professional and real need in so many ways for us to bring in quality health care and jobs, right? And reason for surgeons to be there and to stay there and to give great care to people. Anyway, it's one of those win-win-win situations. So we decided we were going to go to New Orleans in Louisiana first, and that's what we did. And we found a group of doctors, and we opened up our first surgery center in Covington, Louisiana, which is just across the Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans in Covington, Louisiana. Pontchartrain Surgery Center, and a shout out. And that experience changed my life because I was able to have ownership in that surgery center. And so I started earning once we were open. Of course, it took us like a year to develop it and open it. And then it takes, 6 months for it to start making money and profiting. So it's a long, I mean, a year and a half is a long process and it's not a long process. But, when those dividend checks, those profit sharing checks start coming in, it changes your life. It changes your life. And that really, that time in my life, I mean, had one of the single most lasting effects on the entire trajectory of my experience on this planet. Because I went from trading my time for money, getting a paycheck, working a certain amount of hours, doing a job and getting a paycheck, to having ownership in something that would pay me no matter what. No matter if I was working, whether or not I was sick, whether or not I was paying attention, whether or not, because once you have ownership in something and it's a profitable business and that business is kicking off dividends or profit sharing checks, you just receive the check and you just cash those checks and so it becomes passive income. And in this particular case, it becomes residual because this particular business model and these surgery centers were very, very successful. So they would put out a distribution check every single month, right? So maybe the expenses every month were $200,000, but maybe the income was $500,000. And so they would kick off a check, a distribution check. They could distribute, $300,000 a month. And that would go to all the surgeon partners and then our company and everybody who owned in that surgery center. And when that starts happening, when you start receiving profit checks for work you've done. So I worked really, really hard on that surgery center for a year and a half. And then technically I could get paid for that until that surgery center closes or you sell it. And that is what we ended up doing. I think 2 or 3 years later, we ended up selling that surgery center to a larger company. But then you get a big, somebody buys your business, a very successful business, you you sell it for a lot of money. So anyway, my point of telling you this is this was the experience where I went from paycheck to paycheck, being paid by the hour to earning passive residual income off off really hard work that I did. And that money, that passive residual income is what has funded the rest of my life. It is what has allowed me to invest in many other companies. It is what allows me to, choose what I spend my time on every single day. Um, and, it allowed me to go on to be able to direct my own life. And so, after that experience, I really got it in my head that I wanted to develop my own business plan and kind of chart my own path. I was so grateful for the experience of developing myself in this role with my father. It is really one of the greatest gifts I've ever received was the opportunity to be his apprentice, which I didn't realize it at the time. I also didn't realize at the time what an act of feminism it was for my dad to give me that opportunity. What a radical act of feminism it was for my dad to say, I believe in you, Joanna. I think you could do this. I'm going to work your ass to the bone. I know you have it in you. I see something in you that you don't even know is there, that you don't even know is possible as you ride your happy hippie ass to work every day to make $10 an hour. I see in you something you don't even know that's there, and I'm going to give you this opportunity, and I'm going to hold your hand and hold you accountable until you finally feel this and see it for yourself. And I am so grateful that he gave me that opportunity, that he took a stand for my greatness. And I'm so grateful that I took the opportunity and took the chance because I really almost didn't. Sometimes it is so hard to know when you're up against those really, really, really big decisions in your life. When you're so unsure, like you really can't tell which is the right way to go. Like, should I take the job? Should I not take the job? Should I take it? Should I not take it? Like, it's not an obvious path. And then something pushes you, something tips the scale and allows you to just choose. I'm so grateful I made that choice. And then that I worked so hard and I busted my butt for years and years and years. And then I reached out and requested with my help of my friend Chris, who did it too with me. We reached out and we took a chance and we swung for the rafters to be able to have the opportunity to earn ownership. How dare we? How dare we do that? How dare we ask? We did. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And after 7 years of working for my dad and developing surgery centers on my own and seeing what that's like, I decided that I wanted to create my own opportunity and I wanted to create my own business and I wanted to have a meaningful investment of my time. I felt like I had learned everything I needed to learn in this opportunity, and I wanted to be involved in something I was really passionate about you know, in my heart. And so I set to work developing, researching information, developing a business plan for my next venture, which was also a partnership with my friend Chris, my coworker, colleague Chris. We worked on this business plan together as well, and that was integrative medicine. And we did develop a business plan and a business with integrative medicine. And I ended up quitting my job and opening up my own business. And that's gonna be part of the next episode where I talk about this amazing adventure I went on, opening up my own business using the skills that I had learned. Uh, but I love entrepreneurship. I love the entrepreneurial spirit. I recognize and I'm so grateful for this country that we live in that inspires people to be business owners. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk. And, I would say 20 years later, from the beginnings of my entrepreneurial world, 20 years later, I think I finally kind of got a pretty good grasp on, the key elements of a successful business plan. And I love to evaluate business plans. I love to discuss business plans. And that will be part of what I'll be talking about in the next few episodes as we kind of explore business, entrepreneurship, and the pursuit of residual and passive income. Because once you get a taste of residual and passive income, you don't want anything else. So, with that, I will leave it. I hope this um, reflection and story has inspired you a little bit, maybe learned something. If you find this information, this podcast helpful, or any of the information you hear on my recordings, feel free to share with anyone, forward to a friend or someone else you think that might benefit. I would appreciate any likes or reviews you might want to give, and absolutely click follow on Spotify and or YouTube to make sure you receive updates when I develop a new episode and launch a new episode. With that, I hope you have an awesome day, and remember, make every day a good day to die.